Hi everyone, Krzysztof the Polish Geek, and I hope you all had a great Christmas. It's not New Year yet, and yeah, I promised that that was gonna be my last video of 2025, but looks like it's not actually, because I still gotta review Avatar Fire and Ash, which I just seen. So, and what do I have to say about this movie? I actually think it's the best so far of all the Avatar movies. Like, I kind of expected it was gonna be the best because based on the trailers and all, it seemed like it was gonna be the most unique one, and we'll get soon to that actually, and all that. But then the reviews came out and people saying that pretty much the rehash and retreat of all the territory from the previous movies, so that's when my interest in this movie dropped, but I was still pretty much looking forward to seeing the beautiful and magical world of Pandora, but still, when I heard that it's pretty much a retreat of the previous grounds, then my excitement dropped, but I was pleasantly surprised because I have to disagree with that. And no, it's not to say that the movie doesn't retreat the previous grounds, because it very much does so. Like, there are plenty of basically revisiting of the old territory from the first two movies. I won't delude myself to saying that there was none actually, but there were still some pretty interesting and unique ideas to make this movie kind of feel a little distinct and fresh from the previous two, and why it's my favorite one, because I was never a huge fan of the first Avatar movie. In fact, there was a time period when I was in the crowd that was just saying, this movie is trash, it looks beautiful, but it's terrible. And then when it was re-released in 2022, when it got a re-release in theaters, that's when I thought that maybe I was a little too harsh on it, and I did even review it actually. Then I thought that maybe I was just a little bit too harsh on it, that maybe the reason I was hating on it so much was because I thought that the critics and all were making it seem actually better than it actually was, but I ultimately came to the conclusion that it's a pretty okay movie with pretty beautiful visuals and great world building, just a pretty bland story and bland characters. That was my conclusion in 2022 when I rewatched it on the re-release, but then The Way of Water came out and I thought it was a huge improvement over original, and again, that likely stemmed from my huge love and bias for the oceans. And I also thought that the new characters, Jake Sully's kids, were far more likable, and I was more invested in than all the characters in the first movie. So I guess the combination of those two things made me like The Way of Water more, but also again largely because I have huge fondness for the oceans. But even objectively, it still was pretty much a rehash of the very first movie, just with oceans instead of forests and ultimately more likable characters. But then Fire and Ash from trailers seemed like it was gonna introduce a new Na'vi tribe, a fire tribe, and they were gonna be the villains, and now that's what got me excited, because there was another issue with actually the previous movies, actually both the first one and the second one, that it seemed like such a conflict, it seemed like such a black and white conflict. The humans were actually given a pretty sympathetic and understandable motivation for why they are doing the things they are doing in the first movie, but then midway through the conflict kind of basically abandons the idea. It's like they're introducing the sympathetic motivation for humans why they do what they do, and then basically just turns into a black and white conflict that's pretty much just a social commentary on past colonialism, even though in real life it was obviously much more complicated. In general, the lines are much more blurred in real life between good and evil, but then after the humans being given a pretty sympathetic motivation, then the movie kind of turned into basically a black and white conflict. But what made me excited when I saw in Fire and Ash trailers is they were actually introducing a new Na'vi tribe, a fire tribe, a violent tribe, and that's what really very much made me look forward to it. And I'm happy to say that, because I was afraid they were gonna go down the road of basically making this tribe sympathetic, and then at the end humans again, the bad guys, with all the Na'vi tribes uniting, but I was happy to say no. Thankfully, the fire people did not turn sympathetic one bit. In some ways, you might argue that they are actually even more savage than humans in this movie, and I'm also glad that they are starting to slowly introduce more and more sympathetic human characters like a marine biologist, and if they do more movies in the franchise, and it's clear from what this movie is doing that James Cameron clearly very much intends for it, then I'm really hoping we'll see more of that marine biologist, because now I'm very much interested in his character. And we're also shown some human civilians who clearly are unaware of all the violence that the whalers as well as the RVA are doing towards the blue people. So that's also, I'm hoping that maybe in the future movies James Cameron is actually gonna introduce more sympathetic human characters, something that I think those movies will very much benefit from. And then that we are seeing the civilians, I'm actually hoping that maybe that's what they will start doing, and maybe the civilian humans will actually start living in harmony and peace with the blue people, the Na'vi. But again, we'll see where this is going. Also, it's pretty clear that James Cameron very much intends to do more movies in the franchise. He said that it depends on how much money this movie makes, but yeah, to me it's actually pretty clear that he very much intends to do more. Because there were several plot threads and that very much were left unresolved, but if he doesn't do any more movies, I won't shed a tear though, because again, like, the ending was satisfying enough that I don't feel we need any more movies. Don't get the wrong idea. If he does end up making Avatar 4 and 5, then I will likely go and see them, but again, that's another thing I noticed about all those Avatar movies. Like, each of those movies is basically like its own self-contained story, sort of, in a way that when there is an ending, you don't get this feeling, oh, I want more already. No, you kind of like, okay, you finish the movie, and then you just go on with other things, which I think is actually a smart move by James Cameron, honestly, because it seems like he's mostly focusing on a movie he's currently making, instead of basically trying to already dive into a further territory that he doesn't even know that's gonna get made in the first place. So yeah, if there isn't any more movies in the franchise, I won't shed a tear and I won't mind one bit, because again, this movie ended satisfyingly well, so I would have no problems if there weren't any more movies in the franchise. But again, that same could be said for the first two movies. So yes, I keep saying I think this movie had the best story of the three, but am I gonna now delude myself into thinking that this was a particularly deep, rich, compelling story? No, absolutely not. Like, in many ways, again, as I said, there were still plenty of retreats to the old ground of the first two movies actually, but then again, Avatar movies were never really about deep, rich, compelling storytelling, and that's what I frequently say on my channel. Like, it's not really sometimes about deep, rich, compelling story, because the key to a good and interesting movie is likable and interesting characters. And again, as I said, while I do think that the characters in the first Avatar were pretty bland and never really connected with them, I do think that the next generation actually manages to be somewhat more likable, and they are likable enough to very much keep me invested in their story and actually care what happens to them. That's the way I would describe them. But again, the key thing that people go to see Avatar movies anyways are, again, the amazing world building of the beautiful world of Pandora and magnificent, spectacular CGI visuals. And this movie very much had that, because yes, I'm really glad that this movie explored new areas of the world of Pandora, and that's pretty much what I think most fans very much wanted from this movie. So if you're one of the hardcore Avatar fans, which I am not, but if you are, then yes, this movie very much does revisit plenty of new areas of the world of Pandora, and the visuals here and landscapes and everything are just beautiful. But calling them IMAX candies doesn't do them justice. It's actually an insult, more like IMAX exotic food, actually, because yes, this movie, the visuals of this movie are simply gorgeous and beautiful. Those are some of the most beautiful visuals I ever seen in any movie. Like, the first two Avatar movies had already really beautiful visuals, but honestly, I say this one actually puts visuals of the first two movies to shame. Like I was so enchanted. As I was in the theater, I was so enchanted by another beautiful look that the movie was giving me, and it's like I couldn't take my eyes off of a single shot, because again, the beautiful visuals in this movie are just that good. And again, if you've been watching my channel, you know I have huge weakness to beautiful and amazing visuals, but Avatar Fire and Ash had actually some of the most beautiful visuals I ever seen on screen. So again, if you're just going to see this movie for the sake of visuals, then you just gotta go and see it, because visually it's like one of the most beautiful visually looking movies I ever seen. So yes, the visuals and world building are probably really the best part of this movie, but then again, they were pretty much the best part of the first two Avatar movies anyway. Because let's face it, as I already said before a couple of times in this video, Avatar movies never really are about deep, rich and compelling storytelling. The priority is always really visiting the world of Pandora and just looking at really beautiful and magnificent visuals. And I think that Fire and Ash is very much that. But again, I do think the story is still better from the previous two movies, because while it still very much retreats plenty of the old ground, and I still wouldn't call the story particularly deep, really rich or innovative, it does thankfully introduce some really unique ideas to make it somewhat feel fresh, as well as add some nuance to the story that I do feel was missing in the first two movies, especially the first one. So overall, while plenty of critics are saying that Fire and Ash is the worst one of the three, I actually have to disagree. I actually think I like this one the most, actually. So, thank you all of you for checking out this video. Press the like button, please subscribe to this channel, and I will talk to you soon in another video, probably in the new year, this time for real actually. So, see you then.